Now, the second Republican presidential candidate debate kicked off today, once again without former President Donald Trump. He chose not to appear, but at times he still managed to dominate the discussion. Have a look.
And Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. He put $7 trillion on the debt. He should be in this room.
Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you to defend his record where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. That set the stage for the inflation that we have.
So where was Donald Trump? Well, here he was speaking to striking auto workers in Michigan, where he attacked Joe Biden.
What they're doing to the auto industry in Michigan and throughout the country is absolutely horrible and ridiculous. Hundreds of thousands of American jobs, your jobs, will be gone forever because crooked Joe Biden is selling out. But I don't think it's him. I don't think he actually knows what the hell he's doing. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. It's not his fault. Let's not blame him. But he's surrounded with radical left Marxists and crazy people.
Well, looking at the Republican debate, it was fiery. The candidates sensationally clashed over Vivek Ramaswamy's position on Ukraine, also his previous business interests in China.
The reality is just because Putin is Putin's an evil dictator does not mean that Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties.
A win
that has
for Russia is a
that
win
is not
for
true.
China.
We're driving Russia.
For Russia is a win for China.
Excuse me, if you have
but
a chance,
I forgot you like China. That's why
you'll have your chance in just a moment.
Yeah.
The hurling personal insults isn't helping. China is the real enemy, and we're driving Russia further into China's arms. We need a reasonable peace plan to end this, especially this is a country whose president just last week
Vivek,
was
if you
hailing
let Putin have Ukraine, that's a green light to China to take Taiwan.
We need a
peace comes through strength.
Well, Matt, look, according to the polls, Trump is by far the front runner. But when you have a look at the debates, and I know you follow US politics very closely, do you see any candidates who've emerged as strong Republican presidential options if Trump does end up in jail or can't run?
Well, I might put aside the going to jail issue. I don't know. Who knows what happens then? But obviously, Trump seems pretty much untouchable. I didn't watch the debate today, but to date, yeah, I think what you put to me there, I agree with that. I think Donald Trump's got this one by the length of a straight at the moment. And I suppose from our perspective, an Australian perspective, I think we need to have a more rational discussion about potentially preparing for that. And I think there's a head in the sand approach from many of our diplomatic corps that just don't want to consider the possibility of Trump coming back. Luckily, we had Joe Hockey there in Washington last time, and he actually established a working relationship with the Trump campaign, which served us greatly. So I think we should, in our own national interest, prepare for this. I mean, what happens to our climate change policies? What happens to net zero if and when a Republican president comes back? Because they don't support that. And why are we then hitching ourselves to these types of initiatives which may not survive through a presidential election cycle?
James, what about Trump's refusal to take part in these debates? I mean, Republican and Democrat primary debates are a traditional part of US elections, of US democracy. So if you've got Trump refusing to take part, isn't this him subverting the democratic process yet again?
Well, I think that's a bit of a stretch there to say that he's subverting the democratic process. I mean, I think the thing is that he thinks that he's so far ahead here that there's not really a lot of point in participating in them. And to a certain extent, he's correct. I mean, like, it's one thing to say, have him debate against a DeSantis or a Ramaswamy, people of that caliber, and Nikki Haley. But that whole stage was full of people who had no business being on the stage. They have no chance of being anywhere near the Republican nomination. I mean, Chris Christie coming up with this zinger about, we're going to call him Donald Duck for ducking the debates. I mean, like, it was just lame, and some of the other people up there have no hope of ever being anywhere near the nomination. So this is not really, democracy at its best. You would also point out to you, Sharri, that, the Democrats are railroading Robert F. Kennedy Jr. off of the stage to avoid anybody showing up Joe Biden, who, by the way, I don't think will wind up being on the ticket come November.
Yeah, well, and that's another story. But I just want to, so both of you don't think one of the candidates that we saw today is a clear second option after Trump? Like, who do you think's the strongest?
Well, the polls, the polls back that up, Sharri, at this stage. I think if somehow Donald Trump were to not be a candidate, I think even if he was in jail, he'd still get the nomination right now. I don't actually see that happening. But if he weren't, if there was something happen, I think it would be a coin toss. There's no front leader. There was obviously there with Ron DeSantis, but his campaign does not seem to have taken lift off. And so it's a real open field. Maybe there'll be someone else that comes from left field too.